day, dude, I feel like everybody's right and everybody's wrong.
100%. Why is this important? Why are we even going here? He's helped a lot of guys. He's also not had success with a lot of guys.
Come in with a purpose, and they're very intentional with what they do and how they do it.
From the majors to the sandlot, baseball and softball share space in one place. Welcome to the farm system.
Fellas, and the ladies, welcome back to another episode of The Farm Unfiltered. We are back in action. Big Code, we got a couple topics. There's some things happening around the game. And
Recent news.
We're gonna run it through. So today we're gonna talk through a couple of different things. Scherzer being ejected, right?
Yep.
What do we got? 10 games.
Yeah.
Talk through that. Pitch clock violations, people ending games, and all those things happening with the clock there. We're also going to talk through boys. The A's are coming to Vegas.
Oh,
baby.
I know, right?
They coming in.
2027
coming in.
Basically next year.
And then also, Mookie playing shortstop.
Oh yeah, that
yesterday. That was pretty cool.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk through those things do as well. So let's start. Scherzer getting ejected. So maybe we should tell the story first about what kind of the events, if you hadn't heard what had happened, if you hadn't heard, or maybe if they only heard part of the context. I've read a lot of things on it, so let's make sure we both have also read some of the same things. But go ahead.
Yeah, no. So basically, just what I've heard is he was, they do the inning checks for pitchers every inning. And basically, he was repeatedly for the first few innings told, basically clean off your hands, like a warning, essentially. And so he was warned to clean off his hands. And then after the third inning, it was a little bit more serious, like, hey, next time we notice something or think something's a little off, like, you're done. And then he goes out in the fourth and then, basically gets thrown out and eventually suspended and everything. But there's a lot of details in between that, him apparently rubbing his hand off with alcohol in front of umpires, using rosin with it, which is, again, doing it right in front of the umpire. And to my knowledge, rosin is legal still, it's not illegal. But the combination of the rubbing alcohol and rosin is also very well known to lead to some stickiness. So, it could have been sticky, but also right in front of the umpires. And so that's really the extent of what I've seen on it.
I got a couple more details that I learned this morning.
So
So a couple more of the details that I learned from this morning. So the first thing was that yes, he was approaching the first inning. It was a little sticky. X, Y, Z. Asked to wash his hands. So he goes and washes his hands with alcohol. Comes back, put rosin, sweat. Right. He goes and throws again. When he comes back the next time, they check his hand. They're like, okay, your hands are good. But then when they check his glove inside the pocket of his glove is. It seems it's sticky, right? And you got to also get context in here with this, right? These umpires check all the big leaguers every inning, right? So they know the difference of like stickiness, right? If something's feeling a little bit extra sticky than it is previously, right? Okay, so let's say this as well, because they're like, hey, your hands are fine now, but your glove, you need to switch out your glove. Like there's something going on in your glove, right? So then, again, I don't know. Now, I'm not clear if he changed out his glove, but he was told to change out his glove.
Right.
Then, again, he comes off that next inning. His hand, again, the stickiness is there. They ask him to wash his hands. Again, the alcohol, the rosin. Now, this is the other detail that's actually pretty fine, right, is that there is MLB-approved rosin bag that everybody uses, right? Because it's the same. It's it's an approved. Like for example, there's not something added to the rosin to make it more sticky. Like, I'm using the bag. Like
supplements.
But what's inside the rosin, right? They mix it with something to make it a little bit more sticky, something like that, right?
Right.
So he was also saying that as well as like that being a part as well. Okay. Now, Scherzer's also known to be a high spin rate guy, so that also makes it kind of interesting. And, guys that tend to throw hard tend to want to be able to hold something other than that feels like a cue ball. So there's some of that as well. And then, like I said, the umpires are used to touching things, touching hands after each thing. Tanky's trying to find a spot here.
He's getting comfy.
So
all good.
they're used to doing it. Now, also, to my knowledge as well, the umpire that ejected him has also been the only umpire to
Same guy, right?
eject
Yeah.
3 other guys. So that was kind of suspicious, right? Like, again, is it the same guy every single time? It seemed to be that there's a trend that he's ejecting guys too. But also another umpire came and they also he confirmed both of them. And then the other thing that was an additional like detail along with that as well. So then there's also the other thing that they notated too was that his last time that they checked him, it was worse than it was early in the game. Like that's the worst it'd been when they finally like, it's gotten worse. So now you could make the argument, right? Was he sweating more, which made it increase? But they also said it was like in between his fingers. It was like, it was there's a lot more that was going on. But again, if it was inside of his glove, if that was some of the places too. And then lastly, the other thing I'll add as well is, his agent, Scott Boras, also made a statement too, where he's like, well, this is the problem. You got like, it's a subjective, like, is it sticky? Is it not sticky? Is this stickier than others? And also you're just purely going by experience. Like, there's not a lab out there. They're not testing stickiness, what exactly the thing is. And again, also too, that's like way off the deep end, right? Like, what are we doing? We're testing fingers about what they're actually using and all that stuff. Also too, some guys, it's sweat. Again, there's like the other thing with like sunscreen and then sunscreen mixing with certain, things like what it does with stickiness and things as well. And then what do you do then? Do you limit that they're not allowed to wear sunscreen? And so they're supposed to get like, how far do you go? And then I think it's the point of like, you probably have to regulate what sunscreens they're allowed to use. That goes along with it. And then I think taking a whole nother step back, right, is like, why did this become a thing in the first place, right? Well, if you look back, right, Bauer was talking about this for a while, but like, for example, like pitchers have been doing this for a long time. They all had a whole bunch of different, substances that they were doing to mess with spin rates. And again, if you don't know that side of the data side and analytics side, you'd be like, so what? Like, what is it? It's not having that big of effect, difference. But it's having a massive effect. And again, to say that, you actually look back at the numbers when like the MLB was like cracking down. When the MLB like cracked down on it, you saw substantially like spin rates across the league like substantially dropped, and also hitting went up during that time. And then also, if you look at those trends though, over time, the spin rates started to slowly come back up again. And then it makes you think again, okay, if they were cracking down all these other things too, again, and then also did, pitchers start finding ways around it. Like, and again, yes, the umpires are checking their hands, but are they doing it out of, like, because, hey, we're checking hands now? Or, again, or is it now this umpire that's actually taking it serious and like, he's calling guys out for it as well? My last statement I'll say with this is Scherzer was pretty adamant that he was not cheating and that that is not what happened, but that's some context around the entire
I was going to say, like, I think it was a post-game interview, and he was like, they basically warned me that if it's the same or worse, like, I'm getting thrown out. Like, I would be an idiot to go put more of whatever they think I'm putting. Like, I'd just be an idiot.
They already kind of
so you think I'm gonna go put more of whatever you think I have on before that next? Like,
for sure.
No, which for sure. Again, obviously he's not gonna come out post game and be like, oh yeah, I did it, but
I did it.
He's trying not to get suspended 10 games and lose paychecks, but it's not wrong. Why would you go do more if they've already cracked down?
Yeah, that would be that, and I also too and again. I'm not a lie detector here, but just like some of the how, and he's passionate and adamant about most of his, all of his stuff all the time anyways. But he doesn't come off to me like, one, he's not a stupid guy. No. Secondly, on top of that too, like he's above all of those things for his team. He's one of those guys that never wants to come out of the game. So again, if they were cracking down on him, I can see him like, again, why would I put myself in a situation to like really hurt my team?
My team down,
Like, I don't see that happening too. But I do think it opens up an interesting conversation about like subjectively of like, and this is what Scott Boras was saying. It was like, okay, we don't know the difference between sticky and sticky.
Right.
And then he's like, okay, so then they inject him, right? And then they're like, oh yeah, but he can appeal. Okay, but they're going to go by statements of what the umpires felt and those things that day. They sit down with the commissioner, and the commissioner goes, well, it wasn't sticky, it was sticky.
Yeah.
And because of that, like what is the level of stickiness of like what's okay and what is not okay?
Yeah.
It's just so subjective. And I think that becomes obviously the big issue there, right? So, the take here is like, okay, first off, if he is or he's not, whatever, right? There's obviously something that's left open to a subjective opinion on who gets ejected when. I didn't even know, to be honest with you, when they told the story about how many times that they gave him a chance to go do those things, I was like, I didn't even know that was a thing, right? Because I think that shows clear intent that the umpires were trying to not eject him, right? Like that would they didn't. It wasn't like the story kind of came out right where it was like, oh, we checked his fingers and he got ejected, right? It was like that quick, and you've seen those like like guys like whatever his name is like Pineda like back in the day, right, where they went out there and he literally has just like pine tar on his neck, right? It's just like, okay, that's dramatic, right? Like that was the whole thing. Like they obviously didn't think it was enough to eject him immediately,
right?
And then two, on top of that too, obviously had an intent to not eject him though at the same time. So you kind of get a clear way from both sides here, right? The umpires are trying to do what was right. Scherzer's adamant that he wasn't using these things and wasn't doing that. He's using what they said that was able to be used. And also too, you also got to take in is like you have the reputation of a player here, right? That is like, again, you go around the league, right? Like even now today, and I know it's a very big different scandal, right? But like, you have like when fans are ruthless on people that are been deemed cheaters, like it's just, they hammer them, it messes up reputation wise in baseball, it's heavy. So, I mean, I think you do need to really, you got to come up with some regulations or something's got to come out of this where it's like, hey, we got to be able to, if we're going to call this out and eject a guy because of this or, whatever that is, even if it's hey, we're going to swipe your fingers, like maybe it's a tip, like they can, almost like a DNA test or something. They go run it and they run it in between innings or something like that while he's out there pitching. And like, hey, if this comes back that it's like pine tar, this substance, or this substance, running in the back, it doesn't interrupt the game. They swipe, hey, this is, let's see if it's sweat. If it is sweat, it is this, right? Along with that, because I would also too, hey, pitchers and everybody's always trying to find an edge. You can manipulate your sweat. You can by what you're eating, how salty your foods are, how the sugar your intake
you take
is.
some type of supplement, put it in your water or whatever. Like it could make you sweat more, less.
All those things, right?
All sorts of stuff.
And so it actually gets a little bit deeper than all that too. So what do you think would be a throwing that in? Because I think this is a tough conversation. What are some other things? What are some ways that they put some other things so it's not so subjective?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it's hard all around because you're just gonna have the human element to it in the sense of like, I know back when you played, you knew when you had an umpire that rolled up to the field, you're like, oh gosh, we got this guy. Like they have reputations with your team or players on your team as well. And I'm sure it's no different at the MLB level. I'm sure they know who their, the umpire behind the plate is. And, they know ahead of time, like, I'm probably going to get this call with this guy or, I can kind of, pop off a little bit more. And
they got scouting reports for umpires now too, right? Like, of like where they like to call and where they miss calls.
Yeah. And so anytime too, like you just don't know the background of it all. Like, in college, we knew that if we had, whatever his name was, like, don't say anything. We're probably getting thrown out. It's like I'm sure the same thing with them in the sense of like, subjectively, you're just umpires are humans too, and then whoever you're playing, maybe Scherzer last time he had him as an umpire was pretty ruthless to him or whatever, and he's passionate, and it's like I mean you could do lab tests and stuff like that, but it's how far is too far, and then also too, I feel like everyone's always going to adapt. Like, I'm sure there's supplements out there that help you recover that don't get flagged on a test or whatever test they're running too. Like, or they crack down really hard. Well, now they're using a special type of sunscreen or whatever. It's like, put, gum in their mouth and the gum makes it sticky. I don't know. I feel like everyone's always going to adapt to some extent.
Well, but at the same time, I guess the argument could also be said though too. So what do? It's like, oh, it's hard to regulate, so we just don't. So then it just now it's just Wild Wild West again.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think that's the other thing as well. Is like there has to be while how deep do you go with it? Again, how sophisticated do you go? I think, it has to come in a couple criteria. It can't interrupt the fan experience
Right.
/ again, be, a point where it's like stopping the game or any of these other things, right? Like, and we'll talk about that with pitch clock here in a minute, right? But like, still, like, okay, it has to be something where, again, like, that's what I was saying is like, hey, let him keep pitching.
Yeah.
And then, again, if the test comes back, like, he's ejected. Now, again, that also gets tough, too, because, like, what if it's a reliever and the next inning they're pulling him out anyways? But again, okay, let's say you report it afterwards. Maybe they have to forfeit the game, right? They catch a guy that's been thrown with it. It's like, hey, you, like, again, the lab test came back. He had pine tar or he had, there's like a sport tack or, the ones that they like to use.
Too,
spider tack.
Yeah, that
things.
one's been cracked down pretty hard.
Yeah, stuff like that, right? Like there's certain substances that they like to use, and again, they could test for or whatever. And again, I think that, again, that might be, it could be too far, but the only reason I'm saying that is I don't mean that to like go after the player. I'm thinking more to protect the player, right? Because again, if you're going to suspend me and also hurt my reputation and also hurt my reputation with the fans and also, again, do all these things that are going on top of my stigma, and also on top of that, does this come up during my Hall of Fame talks? Does this come up all these other things, right? Where it's like, you better be right. If you're going to eject me and you're going to mess up my, thing, it's like you better be right. So I think there has to be some protection that's thrown in there that protects the player and also too, if you are cheating, like, that these are the rules. I'm not saying that, again, that you should be able to use any substances. Again, batters use pine tar so they can hold onto the bat better, right? But again, it's just the rules of where the current game are. If next year they came out and said that hitters couldn't use pine tar, well, then those would be the rules. Like, these are the rules, right? Just like, if the ball hits first base before you get there, you're out. Like, those are the rules. You can't just change the rules and play how you want to play because, like, these are the rules of the game. So right now, the rules of the game are this. Those are the rules. If you break the rules and you're cheating and other guys aren't allowed to do that and you're allowed to do that, then you're cheating, right? So I think that's the other thing is, like, you got to take that in, too, as well. It's like, hey, this is in place, one, to protect you, and also, two, protect the guys that are actually doing things the right way and are, again, along with that. Like, if you're doing something and have an advantage that other guys are supposed to do, and the league has outlawed that, right, as that is against the rules, well, then, again, if you've been doing that, I think you should be cut. You know, it should be is what it is.
No, I agree 100%. There's just needs to be a definitive,
Agreed.
Whatever statement on it, and rather than,
sticky,
hey,
sticky,
it felt
sticky.
Well, how? Yeah, how sticky?
How sticky? Yeah.
But
and it's going by their experience, right? Like the umpire's experience of, like, other guys that they've been, obviously they're there day in and day out with all these pitchers that they're feeling, and again, what that guy's sweat is or whatever, right? And some guys I'm sure are going to be stickier than others. Who knows? Like, I mean, I know some of these guys are going out at night, having late night benders and,
whatever,
again, sweat's a little bit different the next day where you might be having some things come out. And also too, I mean, maybe that's the thing is, it could be a thing. I know somebody mentioned that as well, is like the alcohol mixing with the rosin, right? Like maybe that had a different effect, and that's something they have to look at, and maybe they were the ones causing it to get more sticky, right? But again, then Scherzer's following either way. There needs to be outlines there where it's like, hey, something happened in this scenario that it's too subjective, and there's a need for more clarification. All right, I think we should different subject.
Yeah, for sure.
Keep moving that subject. So the next thing is pitch clock, right? So pitch clock's been around for a while. When it started in spring training, I thought it was going to probably be worse off than it really has turned into. It has saved 30 minutes on games. There's been crazy things, another topic on what it's done to alcohol sales. That was a whole nother thing. They actually started extending alcohol sales into the 8th inning because they have collectively already at that point in the season, like a couple weeks ago, had lost, I think it was like $30 million in alcohol sales because the games were ending 30 minutes earlier. So I thought that was pretty crazy. So they try to counter that by extending it where they usually cut it off in the 7th inning, but they extended it to the 8th inning. And then the one player countered by saying, like, yeah, but then now our fans are going to leave, like, intoxicated and all these things. And it's like, yeah, but at the same time, like, I also get it. Like, it's just like going to a bar. Like, yes, they can cut you off at a certain point. And again, the bars at the place could still cut you off, right? If you show up and you're drunk, they could cut you off. But I think the other thing is as well, it's like just like leaving a bar. They're not like, yeah, you're going to walk out. If you get in a car right now, it's a DUI, bro. Like, go get an Uber. You get a ride home, go to the pub across the street. Like you still have to be responsible. That's not the ballpark's job.
Yeah.
Even the fact that they cut them off, like, oh, everyone, like, for example, let's say it's my first drink and I go up to the 7th inning and they're like, oh yeah, or the 8th inning and they're like, oh, we cut it off. It's like, that's weird. It's my first drink, right? Like, why is there a cutoff period? It's like a weird, I feel like that's a weird thing that's happened for a long time, which is like, yo, like we have like those rules were put in place before there was mass transit. And also, to be honest with you, a lot of people are either not driving or, again, you have a designated driver and all those things. If they want to drive and they want to do it, why not? Yeah. Right? But anyways, whole nother subject. That wasn't even the point of it. Again, so there's been some things that have popped up because of it. I think one of the things that really hurts the game, and the topic that we're going to talk about here, is like games are ending, big pivotal moments and like a pitch clock violation. Oh, the worst ones have been like when players go back to play at their home city, right? Like Bellinger, shows up at Dodger Stadium as a Cub now, right? And they give him a standing ovation. He stands up, he tips his hat, all that stuff. Umpire, no feel, walks out, goes, time violation, strike one, right? And it's just like, all right, like, I get it. Yes, there's the clock. Yes, you need to be enforcing it. And they're probably being held accountable if they are or not. But still, in that same way, like those situations are like no feel. It's just like, hey, man, like again, there's a bigger scenario happening here, right? Yeah. So the topic comes up. Like, first off, what's just your take on the pitch clock?
Yeah, so I mean, there's a lot that goes into it. Obviously, like you brought up, like all the way to alcohol sales. Yeah. I think the first thing that instantly hit my brain with the pitch clock was injuries, like long term. I don't think you'll notice anything early in the year, but just interesting with the pace of play being faster, how much quicker that pitchers have to get to work. Some of those guys that like to take their time are there going to be an increase of injuries by pitchers, and
before moving from that, let's just go to that one subject for a second. Would you say, though, because they're been basically training themselves to have that muscle endurance or recovery endurance, right? Endurance and recovery, for them to be doing that throughout the whole year, right? And I get it if it was like sudden, like middle of the year, right? If they were like, hey, today clock is starting, right? Yeah. But they knew, all the pitchers knew going in the spring training that this was going to be a thing. They've been doing it in minor leagues for a while now, right? And then also on top of that as well, they have this whole year been able to do it. Where, again, does it actually increase injury? Yeah. Like, does it not?
Yeah.
Like,
also on the flip side, we don't know. How many of the pro guys that are in here talk about, oh yeah, like our batting practice, we only take 8 seconds, to be able to get ready. Like, I just don't know if that's been a focus on people's process. It's in the back of their mind, but it hasn't become part of the routine. Like, hey, in batting practice, we're timing every single time that you're up at the plate in batting practice now, because this is something your internal clock has to be ready for in game.
Well, yeah, and then that one too, right? It's like, okay, well, we could practice that, but right now I'm not in game. Yeah. So if I want to take extra time, like we're gonna talk while I'm working through my stuff, or I want to really focus on my feels right now, or whatever that is. Well, then, yeah. And I think there is a time where it's like, okay, we need to practice, especially if like they're doing inter squads or something like that. Like, I think you should be for sure. But I think, there's all that to keep in context just with that in general.
No, there's a lot that goes into it. But no, definitely, that was the first thing that came in my mind, was kind of just injuries. It'd be interesting to see how people hold up. Yep. Just throughout the year. And not that, it's super extreme, but the way that they've played the game of baseball their whole lives, think about like Wainwright, who's 42, like, my man's been playing in the MLB for 20 years, like, and now all of a sudden it's changed. Well, and so even if they've known, like, it's still 20 years of you playing this game at this level, plus another 20.
What you're speaking to, and I think it's important for the casual fan to realize this, is we're not talking about, he just, because they did a commercial with, what's his name on the Yankees and Trevino. I forgot, who's the one that does the little, I'm a Yankees fan, so I should know, he does his little altered leg kicks.
Oh, is that the Hector
Nordon? Is that his name?
No.
I forgot his.
I think it's Hector.
Name.
He's short little lefty guy.
This is awful by me, by the way. I take full responsibility for not knowing one of the best pitchers in baseball on the team that I like and not knowing his name. Yeah, when we're talking about him, I know someone's like screaming at the car right now, like, "Are you kidding? Are you kidding? His name is this."
Sorry, Nestor Cortez.
Cortez. All right, you can blame it on me. All right, my bad. So they did a commercial because it connects with the casual fan. Well, we need to be more in shape this year and all these other things. And he's like on the treadmill. And I think that casual fan doesn't actually understand like the dynamics of the body. This isn't a, oh, he just needs to be in better shape thing.
Right.
This is like you literally, and it's not your system, okay, has a recovery time CNS wise, but then also tissue and individual muscles. You can train individual muscles endurance as well. So you have muscle endurance and you have cardiovascular endurance. Like you have all these different ways with it. And then you might just like, for example, okay, let's say, for example, your core, for example, has a lot of endurance, like a crazy high level endurance because you use it for almost everything that you do, right? Your calves, for example, are muscles for large endurance. Now, your shoulders, right, are a muscle that, depending on what you do, how you utilize them, you know, you could train, and all these muscles, you can train them to have longer endurance.
Right.
And also just from an anatomy, genetic design standpoint, some of these muscles were never meant to be used for endurance. Right. And some of them were, right? So that they're different types of muscle fibers, let alone how they run, size, all those things that go into shape, all these things that are like, you know, when you get into the anatomy, the crazy stuff. Okay. So the other thing is with that is like, you're talking about like shoulder wise. Okay, great. Look, it's not that he can't throw. It's not that he's, I'm tired, I can't throw. Right? You're also looking from a physiological standpoint is like, hey, the decelerators like on his arm with that endurance level, right? And again, to break this for these things, like they might not have the recovery, the tissue might not have the ability to recover like it needs to, which then could lead to, obviously, if I can't decelerate like I'm supposed to in that recovery period. And so like another way of explaining this before we get deep is like, think of it if you're doing, anybody that has been here, think about if you're doing like a max deadlift or squat or bicep curl or whatever that is, right? When you do like your max, you need longer periods of time to recover. Think of it like this. If you were running distance or running a sprint, right? When I run a sprint, I need more time to recover, where I might run the same distance and be jogging and I'll recover quicker because it doesn't demand so much from my system, didn't demand so much from the muscles, all those other things, right? So, and the commissioner and everybody that is making these decisions, right? Like they're either, hopefully they're meeting with the training staff to understand some of these concepts, because in their head, if you're just going purely business and you're going, we need to speed the game up because it produces a better product, and you're not thinking about what it could actually do to your stars over time, it's something to keep in mind. Now, again, I don't know if we know enough yet can just project, and that it might be one of those things where it's a scarier thing. But again, that's why they tested out in minor leagues. They did those other things first before they moved it up. They did a pilot program, basically. And to this point, it seems to be holding up. I mean, we'll look after we have we have all the data and stuff that comes out afterwards. But again, I just wanted to point that out. That's like some of the things you're describing. And if you don't know anatomy, you might just be like, oh man, those guys need to suck it up, and they just need to, they need to get in shape, right?
Yeah,
that's just not
and then just to go back, like, you need more recovery between sprints to then run a sprint that fast again. You know what I'm saying? Like, you can just line up and run sprint, but also, injury risk increases. Your time goes down. Compensations
does
increase.
Velocity go down over the season, right? Do they hold up as much velocity? And again, though, but maybe that's the play. But then hitters got to hit less velocity. So, it's like, is that?
No, 100%. Yeah, no, there's a lot that goes into it. But, that was the first thing that came to my head. The second thing is someone who was, really valued base running was the time constraint now is, now pitchers are slightly less responsible for holding runners, in my opinion, and it's more on the catcher. And so, what pitch is being thrown and what counts is more important now because they're trying to pick particular pitches to run on. And two, they can't hold long periods of time anymore. And change their looks as much now, which now is reliant on the catcher.
The base runner knows the clock is ticking down, so he could cheat it. Right?
Anticipate.
Or he already picked twice, so then he's got to go to the plate, so guys will cheat that.
Right.
Again, he can't step off right now, so and then the bags are bigger. So all of these things which we've already seen, is seen an increase in bags being stolen. Right. Which is, again,
that's the goal.
That's the goal.
You'd assume.
Right. Is the goal. So, like, that's great. The other thing that goes along with this, though, is, again, getting back to the root right, is obviously the effect it's having on the game when it comes to the hitters, right? So, shout out to my boy, his handle's Late Kick Nation, but Steve, he made a comment about, and a couple of guys have suggested this, is like, hey, like right now, like how this is affecting game is like ridiculous. Like games being decided on a guy not stepping the box like in time or what the, again, which is relying on the umpire to say subjectively, is he ready or is he not ready?
Right.
Right. That's already subjective already too. And then the other part with that is like, so he was suggesting and other people have suggested, why not the pitcher can just throw, like the pitcher can throw, it's on the pitcher and the hitter's just got to adjust to the pitcher. Like when the pitcher's ready to go, you need to be ready to go.
Right.
So that was one of the things. And somebody fired back at him and was like, do you not care about, like, yeah, because if someone's throwing a 98-mile-an-hour pitch and the hitter's not ready, like, yeah, that sounds like a great, projectile, like at a guy that, like, injuries and all those other things. And I think there's a point there. And so I had suggested, which I think people have suggested some different renditions of this, but I kind of suggested like, hey, I think, and what Steve was kind of suggesting here is a mixture of like old and new, where like it's happened at the amateur level for a really long time. If I got both feet in the box, you could pitch, right? And then I added another layer in there where it's like, a pitcher has the ability to pitch no matter what when the clock gets down to like, let's say 4 seconds, right? Like, so now the hitter knows that beforehand. If the clock gets to 4 seconds, he can throw a pitch. And if I have 2 feet in the box, he's able to pitch, right? And both of those keeps him in safety-wise, right? It's like 4 seconds or both feet in the box. And so what's the big alteration there? What the point is right now, the biggest alteration is on the hitter. If the hitter is not in the box within, I think it's 8 seconds, if the hitter's not in the box within 8 seconds, ready to go, it's immediately a strike, right? Where instead, this now puts the weight on the pitcher, right? Meaning in two different ways. It's all based off the pitcher. First off, okay, as soon as he gets in the box with 2 feet, I'm able to pitch, right? Second, on top of that too, within 4 seconds, I'm able to pitch. And then if I don't get the pitch off within that given amount of time in between, then I get a ball, right? And it takes that where, on the same side of that, where it takes that out of the hands of the hitter, with it. Now, you could still have the issue where if the pitcher does let the clock run, the game's decided on a walk that could end up losing the game. But I just think that that's a lot less likely because you would have to have bases loaded.
Yeah.
You would have to have, more of those things where like an out is way more significant than a walk, in my opinion.
And too, all of this goes back to like really the biggest issues is like ending an at bat late in the game or, a standing ovation. Those are really the big issues offensively that we've seen. It's like, that could just be fixed if you have some feel. But also, too, like you said, they're probably being told to heavily enforce it early so it's not a confusion later in the year.
And they develop that clock.
Right. And it's like, it sucks for Belly, going back to L.A., and then he gets, hit with a strike. Or it sucks for McCutcheon, who goes back to Pittsburgh and has his first home game and then gets hit with a strike during an ovation. Like, it sucks.
And correct me if I'm wrong, because I could be wrong in other sports here, right? In football, the defense has a different amount of like a time compared to the offense. Is that correct, or is it the opposite way? I don't know the exact rules.
I don't know if the defense necessarily has a specific amount of time in football. I know the offense obviously has a play clock.
Yeah.
But I don't know if the defense particularly has a specific time.
I think it's set up where then like a lot of times there where you can kind of see their general formations.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're supposed to break the huddle with, X amount of time. But, there's 12 people on the field violations in football at times. So, I mean, I don't necessarily think they have to, be ready and 100% ready to go all the time by a specific amount of time. But for sure, offense has the play clock down for sure. And you would assume that there has to be some type of
so it says
period.
both a 40-second and 25-second play clock are used unless the game is stopped by administrative reasons. The offensive team has 40 seconds to snap the ball after the previous play ends. After administrative stoppages, a 25-second play clock is used. So again, like you're kind of saying there is that and I'm going to keep looking just in case there's another one. That's the top result that just came on, with that way. But I think also, with that as well as like it just depends on the situation, which clock that they use there.
Yeah, which I mean, that goes back to too. Like, hey, if you're, I mean, I know it kind of sounds backwards because it is defense versus offense, but really, like the person who's controlling the game is the guy with the ball, is the pitcher, right? The guy who's controlling the game is the offense, the center, the quarterback, right? In football, the guy who's controlling the game is the guy with the ball in basketball, who's inbounding it, who's the point guard, right? And everyone else is dependent to get ready and prepared based on that, right? Yeah. And so I know it's kind of flipped where, hitting is offense and pitching is defense and et cetera. But, essentially they have the ball in their hand. It's based on them, right? And you have to be ready to go on them.
Yeah.
And so, I think the interesting part though with that is how often can you change this pitch clock before it starts really messing with people that are playing and making them mad. Like, oh, we're gonna make an adjustment this year now because we want to tweak it, and then we're gonna make this like. You can't make too many adjustments. Like you got to kind of get it right.
But I also get that too. That obviously when you roll out a new thing, like there's gonna have to be some slight adjustments, right? Like, and I think they're already gonna make adjustments just going into next year. And I'm sure they've had conversations about like feel that they've had, and then umpires are probably seeing some of these things as well. As like a lot of people forget that like umpires are also fans of the game, right? So like there's certain things that they're probably adjusting to in those things as well. So I think that's an interesting play. I just think, again, along with that, it just puts it where, it's more on the pitcher where it's like, hey, again, like if I put 2 feet in the box, this guy can throw. And either I'm not stepping out and again, that's kind of, and the reason I bring that up is when you're young, the umpire will do that, right? If you're taking forever outside the box, he'll be like, get in the box, get in the box, like pitcher, play, like, and like he'll tell the catcher, like, hey, like have him throw the ball, like, and then again, like the guy throws a ball, and then like it's it's a strike. This guy's gonna start getting the box quicker, right? And so like again, that could be I'm sure somebody lost a thing on this, so they're probably pissed and like, yeah, that's exactly like John, F John, like John's the one that ended my game. It's just like, yeah, okay. Again, it's been used throughout time, but I think on the same side of that, right? It's like it does give it a general like. Again, urgency of play, right, too, is because those games also, too, young, youth, games can get drawn out dramatically. Just by players, all kinds of stuff.
No, and then also, too, to kind of like segue into one of our other topics is, what does that do for the players when it comes to like what you're saying, like endurance-wise, like, okay, so you have X amount of time to get in the box, then you're on base and you only have X amount of time to do whatever, right? And everything feels faster. It's like...
Yeah, remember when that just happened? I think it was someone got called a strike because someone didn't get back to the bag quick enough. It might have been Rizzo or
I want to say it was Pete Alonso.
Yeah, that's right.
I want to say
that's what it was.
Yeah, but someone didn't get back to first base quick enough,
and he called a strike on the batter. And I'm like, that's
it's like no offense, but Pete Alonso doesn't look like he's in the most supreme shape of his life. Like my man needed a breather.
I'm sure he sprinted over there, and again, along with that, within those seconds, I'm sure he had plenty of time to get back, or they'd be calling that all the time.
Yeah.
But along with it, it's like, but again, I think that's the hard part, right? Is like, okay, well, how do you penalize the offense, right? Like, how do you have to call a strike? That's the most minimal thing you can do, right? No. Sorry. You could take away the batter's timeout.
Yeah, that's
because they only have one. That's the new rule, right? So if he calls time, and then now if he's already used his time, then I think it has to be a strike.
Yeah.
No, if the guy's not back to the bag, right? Like, and you're enforcing the pitch clock in that way. It's like you got to penalize the team in some way, right?
Yeah.
So I think the penalty should, again, first layer would be, do you have a timeout, right? Because that's like same thing in basketball, right? The timeout layout and like all that stuff.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, I'm gonna penalize you based on like if you have a timeout, like okay, I'll take your timeout.
Right.
But if not, then again, I'll penalize you with a strike. It's not like he immediately called the guy out.
Yeah.
That's dramatic, but
but I mean, if there's two strikes,
Yeah,
that's tough.
So, but again, again, how often does that have to happen where the guy just gets back to the and it's the same thing, right? Too in football. If you don't get off the field on time and they hike the ball, like bro, get off the field.
Yeah.
Like again, there is a clock.
Yeah.
Like get moving, and that's part of the game strategy.
Yeah, no, and that's kind of it was actually funny because it was a video on YouTube I was watching. It was the guy who coached Team USA, Mark. Is it Mark DeRosa?
Yep.
Whatever his name is, D-Rose. But he was talking about coaching Mookie, and it was no pitch clock in the WBC. It's the old school rules and everything. Yep. But he was talking about Mookie wanted to play second base. Yep. This whole time, blah 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 blah. Yep. And he was like, yeah, D-Rose, like my legs are tired. I can't run all the way out to right field anymore, bro. Like, you know, I was just like, is there any way I can play second? And he was like, what? It was like, you know, he was like, what if me and McNeil switch? And he was like, I'm not telling him. You can tell him. And like, if he's cool, I guess you can go out to second. He can go to right. But it, you know, like the endurance and like the longevity and stuff like that, like leading into you know,
probably being goofy. There,
yeah, he was just being a little Harold, you know, where he's just like, oh, my legs. He wanted to play second base. Is all it is. But on the real note,
drafted as a shortstop, I believe.
Yeah, well, at least middle infielder to my knowledge.
Sure.
But
yeah, I think it was a shortstop though.
But yeah, you know, like you know, the guys like Alonso or like a Rowdy Tellez or some of those bigger guys that, you know, they're not necessarily, you know, endurance guys, let's say, right? And you're out there, maybe you're on the bases and whatever. It's like you get out there and you only have X amount of time in between innings now too. So, you know, you go, someone hits a ball in the gap, they track one down, you're sprinting, you're from first to third, you're tired, you go back to the dugout, you got to get out, you know, to your position in X amount of time too. It's like, you know, the longevity in that sense too is like, is that going to wear on people differently as well? Which it seems, you know, quote unquote soft, but again, 162 games, like that's a lot. I mean, and you switch something like that up a little bit.
Yeah.
Right. Over 162 game span, like that can add up over time.
And again, it can be altered too. It could be altered too by having, you know, players just, again, maybe they need an extra off day or, you know, those other things.
Yeah. More platooning and stuff.
But yeah. So Mookie's quote was, he was drafted as a shortstop, so I'm just going to go by his own quote.
Yeah.
And hopefully he knows what he's talking about. But, yeah, that he was drafted as a shortstop. So I think that also kind of segues, like, into that.
Yeah, no, I mean, my man wants to play.
Yeah.
He wants to play up the middle. And, two, I mean, like, that's what, just going based on what, like, D-Rose said in that video, like, he was like, man, it's like, one, Mookie was the hardest one to get a hold of during this whole process. I couldn't get him on the phone. But he goes, once I coached him, like, he is a freak athlete. He was just like, man, like everyone wanted me to play him at second. That was the big deal because then we could get another outfielder, you know, and, you know, the U.S., they got guys that can hit out there. Yeah. So they're like, you know, if we can get Mookie's bat and put him at second, you know, we'll rock with that. And he was like, well, you know, I always kind of doubted it.
But McNeely led the league in batting average.
Yeah.
It's not a bad option.
Yeah, I know. But also people love bombs. That's really the gist of it. They love the Schwarbers. You know, like Schwarber hits 200 in their WBC, but hits a tank. They're like, oh, Schwarber.
Yeah. No, but yeah, so I mean,
got, you know.
Well, I also remember hearing a thing about him, you know, wanting to play second base, and they had the conversation with him. It's like, hey, look, like, I don't know I forgot how many Gold Gloves he has out in right field. He's like, you're the, you know, if not the best right fielder, like in baseball, like you're near, you know, top 5.
Yeah.
Right. So if that's the, you know, case just defensively, let alone hitting, you know, that doesn't change position to position, but defensively, you know, he's a Gold Glove out there, and he's won multiple Gold Gloves playing outfield. So it obviously just recently happened, I think last night, where Mookie, they had some injuries. Dodgers have had some injuries. They're making some other moves where they're calling some other guys. But again, Mookie played shortstop last night for the Dodgers, or the night before the Dodgers. And in any case, you know, it's like his dream come true. Like he wants to play middle infield, or he likes playing middle infield. And yeah, he did good. Like and had, you know, a good game. And they're like, you know, and then they were asking him like, hey, did you you know, enjoy it? Is this going to be like a new thing that you're doing? And he's like, nah. Like even then he's like, no, like we got other guys and stuff, but it was like, it was fun to do. And he's like, I haven't played out there since like, I think he said 2011. He hasn't played shortstop, but like, you know, again, along with that, he takes ground balls, just so people know too. He takes ground balls in the infield all the time.
Like probably daily.
Yeah. He takes ground balls all the
BP
time.
and stuff, which again, you know, you go watch Big League BP. I mean, everybody's taking ground balls or flat, like, people are bouncing around. They're having fun.
And you got pitchers out there in the outfield shagging for you. Yeah, for sure.
It's not abnormal.
And then you got a whole bunch of like admin people out
there.
Too.
Like the bat boy.
There's a lot of people out there to get baseballs for sure.
Yeah, no, but I think it's interesting too, though, is going back to like how good of an athlete he has to be to play shortstop at the major league level, even if it's just one game,
even just one inning,
and not since 2011
in a competitive game.
Yeah, okay, you enter squad there. That's one thing. To go out there with the fans out there playing shortstop,
and you ain't done it in over 10 years.
Ain't done it in over 10 years. Like that's impressive. Like that goes back to just he's a freak athlete. My man's he can
bowling,
do it.
all the things. Yeah, he's done. Got some crazy stuff. So I think that's pretty cool. I mean, when they said he put in the short, like he's one of those guys where I'm like,
Oh,
Look.
But-
And that's a whole nother level, though. I'm going to say this. This is another thing. Like, putting him at second, okay, that's one thing.
Yeah.
But putting him at short,
Yeah.
like, man, like, that's like second base. Okay, I know there's quite a few people on the field that have, had some infield experience, haven't played there in 10 years. Like, you can get away with some things at second base. Shortstop's not an easy position.
I was going to say, you also made a comment like, hitting doesn't change by position. And I don't think you meant it the way like I interpreted it, but you think Mookie, if he played shortstop for a year versus right field, do you think he would hit the same?
I think so.
You think so? You don't think the position you play has an influence? Obviously, catcher will throw out.
Yeah.
But you don't think shortstops, some of the demand on shortstops, you don't think is a lot sometimes?
I wouldn't say that. I'm just saying like maybe it'd have some, minor effects on like what his legs feel like or, X, Y, and Z. But then also too, like in the outfield, like, okay, it's another thing as well. It's like he's also running long routes where he could pull a hamstring. That is, he could do a lot of things where you're not probably never getting up to full speed at short almost ever. Right. So, like some of that stuff and like side to side, some of those things as well. But like also like just in general, there's been many guys that have changed positions or constantly change positions, every single game and like all those things as well. And I think it has more of effect too, like, again, for example, catcher's dramatic.
Yeah,
but
for
like,
sure, catcher.
But I do think that you throw more and
That's what I was going to say was the throwing.
Yeah.
I'd really have to look at numbers. I assume shortstops throw the ball more than right fielders on a yearly basis.
Yeah,
you would
but
assume.
Also intent though, right fielders usually are also gunning balls.
Yeah, they're throwing it, longer distances, harder. Well,
yeah, and it could affect his arm where if he just, again, obviously any athlete, right? If you have any, even if it's tissue fatigue or any of those things too, it could affect how you move, for sure.
Absolutely.
I just think in general, like, again, like changing position, especially with how often he plays, like, and takes ground balls and he does all those things, like he might be taking just as many ground balls as, again, because also let's be honest, how many ground balls are you actually getting at short during a Major League Baseball game on average?
Yeah,
like you're probably getting, what, 4, 5,
maybe a couple.
a game.
Yeah, well,
So,
that you
crazy.
field on average,
Yeah.
there's games where you just don't get a ball, and then there's some games you get 5, 6, 7, it's just you get lit up. So, on average, I'd assume a few, but yeah, no, and then too, like the mental aspect, I felt like, I played middle infield, but going out to the outfield, it's different mentally to stay locked in out there compared to at shortstop. I felt like I didn't hit as well in the outfield because I had too much free time to just kind of be and think, whereas at shortstop, I was kind of forced to always be engaged and it kept me locked in the whole time. I even felt that way at second base a little bit, and so I was just curious because, I don't know if you can necessarily measure, what kind of pressure or anxiety or stress or whatever a particular position puts on a person. And obviously different per person. Some people probably could care less. Like Trey Turner could probably go play center field, second base, shortstop, and not really care. But then you got a young guy coming up that may.
Well, I think one of the big ways is you can just look at that and just go like historically, what that looks like.
Like historically, though, this is where kind of not an argument, but like my debate would be is like, how many people of some of the best hitters of all time, you think of the top 10 best hitters of all time, what positions do they play? Generally speaking.
Third, first, left, right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, and I know too, not as much movement required from those positions on the corner necessarily all the time, so they can typically be bigger guys. But that's where too is just kind of like a longevity thing or like macro thing. Is like,
know,
is it?
Do you think it's a longevity thing, or I think it has something to do with their weight? Like guys are going to hit for power.
Well, I think part of that goes into longevity though. I felt like I feel like too. You go look at guys. It can go both ways. You got big guys that can get injured, but also too that goes to like your opinion on like what's good weight for a big guy. What's is he fat or is he strong necessarily too? But I think like why do colleges like bigger built guys?
Well, I just think it's just you got more potential to do damage, right? You got weight. It's no shocker that the top 5 to 8 home run leaders every single year are 230 pounds typically.
Yeah, 100%.
Like so I think along with that,
But because of that, though, on the flip side, like, how efficient does someone who's small have to be able to compete like that, like an Altuve, to be in that same range,
well,
right?
I think but I think that's also the bias of the same thing. Like, for example, like Mookie wouldn't have to lose any weight to play short.
No.
Like, if anything, like he's the same too. And I think, like, for example, like, and again, he's in that conversation with home runs every single year, and so is Altuve, right? Both of them are smaller guys that are really, efficient with generally efficient with how they move there as well. So I think that's the other thing as well, is like, for a certain guy, like, like A-Rod, again, yes, roids, blah, blah, blah. Okay, we could take Miggy. Miggy, I think, also was drafted as a shortstop.
Yeah.
Bregman was also drafted as a shortstop. There's a ton of guys in the league that were drafted as center fielders or shortstops.
Yeah.
So I think there's also like an elite level, like, there as well, of like, yeah, like if I would have to lose a bunch of weight, like let's say you put like, someone played short the other game that doesn't typically play short. Yeah, I mean, I think along with that, it's like, yeah, there's a weight component to it too, but I think that's also just set up, and also that's also if you highly regard defensively what your shortstop would be. There's some people like, again, Derek Jeter, the last 5-6 years of his career was not an elite defensive shortstop. And what I mean by that is not
that one's going to make people mad.
I know that one's going to piss everybody off. But like, again, along with that, when it comes to range, like he wasn't a big range guy the last 5 or 6 years of his, but again, he was really good at hitting balls that he got to, fielding balls that he got to. So in that way, you can say he was elite, right? Because, but even then, there was years that he's winning Gold Gloves and things like that too, where he didn't have the highest fielding percentages, that he didn't have all these other things.
Well, I mean, going into that,
like
he probably was very elite at positioning himself.
Yeah.
So maybe he doesn't get to a ball because of his range, but as the years went on, he probably positioned himself to get to some balls that, maybe he didn't get to with range earlier in his career just because he knows the game better, right?
Sure.
Knows the pitcher, knows the batter, So on the flip side, like, I'm sure he covered a fair share of balls, by positioning too. But
agreed. Yeah.
That's again, for the Jeter fans out there that, that pissed off.
Yeah, 100%. And again, I'm a Jeter fan. I'm just statistically from the
being
other side.
real.
Like, you got to also remember too, like, Jeter was playing at a time where there was a lot of elite shortstops that were out there.
Yeah.
That was a shortstop era, right? Where there was some elite shortstops that were all happening at the same time.
Yeah.
And also too, you got to remember too, like, and this is an argument there as well. It's like A-Rod was an elite shortstop.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Was a nasty elite shortstop, right? And again, I would argue on the same side of that, right? Like shortstop wise, like I think Jeter couldn't play third.
No.
A-Rod can.
Yeah.
But like Jeter couldn't play third.
Right.
So, or I mean, obviously he could play
sure,
there, but he
he
would
could,
not at
but
the
not to
same
the
level
that-
A-Rod had played at third, right?
Right.
So he was able to move in that way, right? And like Jeter, I don't think would have planned out. He's not gonna be able to hit the home runs and the things that obviously that like Jeter would, like that was able to be done as a shortstop to get that done. But again, like Miguel Cabrera, like again moving the third, then moving the first, right? Then basically just DH, just DH now, right?
Weaseling his way down.
Have changed. All of that as well. So I think that's the other thing as well, is like again, ability to also like change positions, like do those other things as well. I think would be big there as well. And again, you could take that in, like Nolan Arenado, like he could play short, but like he's also a low sprint speed according to the show.
Yeah,
we played
24
yesterday.
or something like that, right?
Yeah, ranked like a 24 or something in his speed. That's pretty tough. So you got those as well, right? But like I think yes, there's definitely wear and tear. I think, but again, I don't know if you could really like just generally put a blanket statement, because it's so person to person of like what the demand would be for you. Like Pete Alonso at short would be pretty tough, right? Like that would be pretty tough, right? Like he's not going to move. He's not built to do that, right? So his body, and again, even if he trained a different way, like his frame is not built to go to do what he's supposed to do. Like again, my frame was not built for me to play shortstop, even though I did a long, time in my career. Again, along with that, right? Like my frame was not advantageous for that position very well. So I think that's also, a big piece that you take as well. But I think the one that obviously is a big deal, I think actually two that people don't think about, because we do have that in the league now, is like, Ohtani pitching and hitting is, and then also catching. Like like players that catch and like hit, like those positions definitely have a major effect
Yeah.
on, you doing it. And then like you would say, someone would be like, well, why pitching? Like, again, like again, the amount that you're using your legs, and again,
Yeah.
all the ways like fatigue.
The reason they pitch every 5th game.
Yes,
They need to recover.
large
There's
recovery
fatigue.
for a reason.
Yeah.
And again, there's a reason that he generally is just DHs when he's not pitching, because like, again, the wear and tear of also being on the field while he's trying to recover so he can pitch again.
Yeah.
Managing that workload is super important too. So, I mean, I think that there's definitely positional things there that are big, but I mean, just in general, pretty cool. Pretty cool just to see Mookie like, go play short, and it just adds to like the, the magic of Mookie and like the things he's able to do, and he's one of the greatest stars in our game at the moment, and so I just think like that's just awesome in general. It's like good.
Yeah, no, anytime someone can go play out of their normal position and do it good, good enough to not hurt the team is always cool to see.
He can, and he's an elite one where he can go play a different sport and still be at the top of that sport. Like again, like bowling. Like he
supposedly bowls a ton of 300 games.
Yeah, like I said, he's legit. Like he could be a pro bowler.
Yeah.
And he's done a lot of things where like basketball he's nasty. Like there's a couple things that he's done where he's just nasty.
Yeah.
I think that's cool there. And then rolling into our final topic here, the big one. The A's announced they bought the land, and by 2027, big dogs are supposed to be out here in Vegas.
Right.
So what are your initial thoughts on that one?
Yeah. So my initial thoughts are they going to rebrand anything? It's funny. Just like that's the first thing my head goes to. It's like,
wow, your first thought wasn't about how how that area has lost their third pro team in the last like 3 years.
No,
two of them came to Vegas.
I've never been to Oakland in my life.
Oh,
so
they don't care about the people.
No, so
all right, listen, all of our Oakland people are gonna be firing off at Cody.
I know, right? That's okay.
No empathy, bro. No empathy for the people.
No, I mean,
heartbroken right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's it is what it is. They need to hate me, not you as much. You know what I'm saying? So, but no, that's the first thing was like, are they gonna rebrand at all? Because just as bad as they've been for so long, do they want to kind of throw that identity in the past and be like, we're kind of new chapter? And when I say rebrand, not be like, oh, we're the Las Vegas Pandas, like not a completely new team, but like, are they going to change some colors? I mean, not a lot of pandas in Vegas that I've seen, not just roaming around. But like, are they going to change like a little color scheme here and there? Are they going to throw a little flair to the A's?
I think they should embrace the black a little bit.
Yeah.
So like, all the teams are like the Raiders black, right? The Knights black. Like obviously they have these other colors, but I think like a black and green jersey would be pretty fire.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
That'd be pretty fire. And also, I'm sure they'll redo like the A's logo so it looks,
there's a lot that goes into rebranding, like even the styles of things.
Las Vegas, across the shirts.
Yeah, could they combine, Las Vegas and
the jerseys are definitely going to be different.
You know what I'm saying? Like, it doesn't, they could still be the Athletics, but how are they going to present the Athletics brand?
Las Vegas Athletics still sounds good.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? So that was kind of the first thing. And then also, too, just being here in Vegas, like,
hype.
Where are they going to put it? I was like, it's already busy up in here.
So they mapped it out, and if you know Vegas is pretty cool, because and again, if you also know Vegas, you're like parking.
Yeah.
So you got okay, so you got Allegiant, which is where Allegiant where the Raiders play.
Yeah.
Then you got T-Mobile Arena, which is where the Knights and also they host all these crazy events.
Yeah, like March Madness and concerts.
They are in a diagonal across the freeway from each other within a couple blocks, but in that L pattern, like between both of them, kind of catty-cornered, is going to be where they bought land from Red Rock, where they're going to build that there. Now, again, hopefully with that, they're going to build in. I think, what did it say? How many billion that they're spending on the stadium?
Oh, well, it was $1 billion on the stadium alone, I thought.
Yeah,
right?
I thought it was even more.
Or anything. I mean.
Yeah, I thought it was. Yeah, I forgot.
It's at least $1 billion.
I have to.
With a B.
Do
it, not an M. That's
with a B, and that was just the stadium. Let's see.
Yeah, that's not including like parking, some of the other extracurricular things that stadiums tend to have. A part of it, like Kansas City growing up there, like they got the little K out there that's like a miniature version of Kauffman and stuff, like not including that stuff too.
Yeah, so we got $1 billion stadium in Las Vegas. So I'm sure that land that the Red Rock sold to them was not cheap. So that's
well, yeah.
if that's just the stadium, like that's crazy.
Yeah.
$1 billion stadium is nuts. So that's crazy. But also too, again, I wonder what the traffic and all that stuff looks like. You know,
a lot
it's
of
gonna
Ubers.
be, like, because we talked about that. There's be certain times of the year, right? There's a certain time of the year where you got 3 different. You could have a Raiders game, athletics game, and a Knights game.
Yeah.
All happening on the same night.
I say because NHL
And
starts
that would be
like winterish fall, right?
crazy.
I don't know when the NHL season starts exactly. I've never really followed hockey.
Yeah.
You know,
No,
admittedly.
there's a lot of overlap
Is there?
with some.
Yeah, because
baseball
in
games, for
football,
sure.
football, you know, they start August, September because the A's and the Raiders, I mean, they used to play in the same field, so you would see the Raiders playing with the infield dirt, you know, on their old field up in Oakland.
Well, now that I'm thinking about it, I could have been wrong about that. I know that there's overlap with it because the baseball season's so long. I know there's overlap with hockey and football with baseball, but I'm not sure if hockey and
Baseball.
and NFL run at the same time.
Yeah.
I don't know the exact.
Yeah,
I'd have to double check.
Yeah, I don't know either.
That's something.
Never
see,
really
this is
been
my
a
problem.
hockey.
Others.
I've
Again,
never
someone's
been.
yelling at me again. How do you not know? Someone's
Yeah.
like in there with all the fact, like
all good.
from each sport,
It's
right?
all
But in
good.
any case, there's a. Anyways, let's just put it this way: parking. If you have been, first off, Allegiant Stadium parking is non-existent.
No,
so
it's
let's
not
just
there.
show everybody is parking at casinos.
Casinos.
So my first
Then
thing
walking
was the
across.
thought there too is like maybe what they could do. They already have parking garages, right? Do they just build them higher? Do they just stack it on top and make that parking garage like sky high, right? Like where it comes into like there's just another place for you to park across the street.
No, we'll throw in your contact info for these guys to reach out after some
I
of your
got you guys.
ideas.
I'll help you guys understand your parking.
Definitely
scenario
give,
here,
a
right?
little
Demographic,
commission.
Stand up for the people. People's champ, baby. Yeah, so I think that's, like in part.
The stadium is set to seat 35,000.
35, yeah, 35,000 a stadium. I think that's also going to be, that's pretty. I mean, it's pretty big. To be fair though, they're coming from their stadium now was also built for football.
Yeah.
So they
Well,
have
it
a
don't
bigger
matter how
stadium
much
now.
it can fit in Oakland. They're getting 3,000
Yeah,
people.
we're getting more fans here at the and also if you didn't know this fact, the AAA team here in Vegas was the Athletics AAA team. They continuously we have more sellouts, not only more sellouts, but more fans in general than the major league games.
Yeah.
So that's crazy out in Oakland. Now, there's a lot of things of why that means. First off, the first game, shout out to Oakland. That's the first opening day I've ever been to was to Oakland. And again, it was a great experience. But yeah, that stadium is gone.
It's
to
older,
it's
isn't it?
tough. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then some people blame it on a lot of different things. Some people are blaming it on the city of Oakland. Some people are blaming it on the ownership. Some people are blaming it on the fans, right? Because they're not going to the games
Well, I
and all
mean,
that stuff, right?
Like everything, yes. It's
Yeah,
like a combination
all
of
it,
a lot of things.
all of it is yes, right? I know some people are like a person for the fans, some people are for the ownership, some people, and then I also get this too. This is where people also don't understand about like the economics and all that stuff. If you're going to build a $1 billion stadium and you already knew that you were moving, I think intentionally I would not be paying for all these players for
Right.
$40 million,
Yeah.
all these other things, because you're now trying to hold that capital in so that they can go and do this bigger move
Right.
for them, right? So they're like, again, it's just like when teams hold out for trying to get draft picks and all these other things, right? Or again, when the Rays intentionally for years were losing so that they can get the highest draft pick and have money to pay them,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
So if you had all these guys, like there's certain ways where that's just can't be the case. The Tank,
Yeah, no, Tank's
getting a little
yeah.
back scratching.
Tank's
on the
rubbing
ground.
about everything
Yeah,
he can.
He's just doing what he can over there.
Yeah, that's a big smile.
But yeah, he's like, oh, that felt good back there. But yeah, I think that's some of the things of like, as well as like, there's a lot of those dynamics that are in there. Also, another thing in Vegas, we'll go back to the team here in a second, but we're also supposed to be getting an NBA team here
Yeah.
at some point that you were talking about, like LeBron.
Yeah,
trying to
no,
get on
I
and
just
on.
know LeBron.
He did some league out here, too.
Yeah, big LeBron fan. I know he's voiced his interest in owning a team.
Yeah. They've
For
talked
a
about it.
long time.
Yeah.
I mean, even back when he was with the Cavs a long time ago, like
With
that
the
was
Hayes
his
coming here, it
ultimate
might be a
dream.
closed book, though.
Yeah, it's like, and then I think it was, it's hard to go step in as a full-time owner of someone who's already solidified as he's not going to be the owner of the Lakers. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, of
like,
course.
and so,
Expansion team would be
yeah, it's
good,
going to be an
big fit.
expansion team, which is also good for the NBA because they've talked about expanding multiple times.
Yeah. Diversity in owners, too. And
yeah.
stuff like
And
that.
then also, too, if anyone can do it, it's LeBron who's in LA shooting movies, commercials. Like, done a $1 billion lifetime deal with Nike.
Yeah.
Like, I think he's in a pretty
It'd
good
be
position
cool.
to make that move.
It would be cool. It'd be cool to see if they're like Kobe's family or something like that could also get into an expansion team or something like that. That'd be a cool little PR. Like, great pull.
No, 100%. So. No, like combination. And then too, the cool thing to think about it is think about like the players that end up, in particular cities. Is I know it just kind of goes where, they're wanted, but Vegas being very entertainment heavy, what type of players is the Vegas market going to attract? Even just with the Raiders, like you go get like a Jimmy G, right? It looks good, kind of like, Bachelor at 30.
Until.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? And so it's like, some of those types of things. Like, are you going to get players with some flair because they're in Vegas and it's like entertainment capital?
What year is it? What year is it where the Super Bowl is supposed to be here?
This next year, I'm pretty sure.
Man. Because that just kind of blows my mind. I know we're getting into a different topic, but you would think that the Raiders have been like, this is the year we got to spend some. Because again, can you imagine the Raiders
home game
in the Super Bowl?
Yeah,
in their own stadium.
Yeah, I was gonna say. I mean, they're so far off. And two, you just got to beat the Chiefs. The Chiefs has won 2 of like the last 4 or something like that.
Yeah, but it's like there's so much money you think they'd be going off right now. We're getting into some NFL stuff, but we're hurting Jarrell's heart with this combo. But like then he's a big Raiders fan, by the way.
Yeah.
But so again, okay. So going back to the stadium here locally, so I think one for us would be really cool. One, because I'm used to when I was living out in SoCal there for a couple of years, like going to all the games. Like I was going to Angels games like all the time. I was seeing Mr. Trout play constantly. I was there before Ohtani came out though. And so like that, that's gonna be pretty cool is again, just have the teams here locally. The other thing that people don't know, and I wonder with that dynamic as well, is there's a rule in place where you can't have a AAA stadium and a certain amount of mileage as close to a major league stadium.
Yeah, it's 20 something.
So the Las Vegas ballpark, I'm not sure if that mileage, I don't know if they're far enough.
Come on, Tanky. You can make it. You got big shoulders.
Yeah. I'm not sure if the mileage is going to work. If the mileage is going to work.
It's a nice ballpark.
That ballpark is brand
Unless they got to go AA.
Yeah. And again, I don't know if they switch it to AA or something like that. Like if that is gonna work either. Because I don't know if it's just all minor league stadiums or if it's just AAA and with that as well. So maybe I can look that up. What are your thoughts on, with that though? That's kind of tough, right? With the new stadium being built.
Yeah. Well, I mean that's a nice ballpark and it's in a really nice area, and so I don't know. I mean, you can move it to AA, but I just can't imagine you having a big league. I mean, you got a big league team down the street. Why are you going to a AA game?
Exactly.
You're
losing so much money.
You're gonna lose so much money, right? And it's like, it costs a little more. Like, ish. But also, like, so you're gonna pay an extra couple bucks for a ticket to sit up top at a big league game at one of the nicest stadiums probably in the country once it's built. You'd assume, $1 billion stadium. Why would you go to the one 20 minutes away to watch AA ball? And so it'll be interesting to see what they do with it, even if it's a different team, even if it's a different org. Like, I just can't, if the Royals are in Kansas City, the Storm Chasers are in Omaha. Like, if they're in the same 30-minute span, I'm going to go watch Royals, even though the Royals aren't, killing it. Like, I'm going to go watch the Royals. I'm not going to watch their AAA affiliate.
100%.
Right? And so, I don't know. It'll be interesting because, they do some events and stuff, like you said. And so it'll be interesting to see what they do. They'll have to move them, right?
Yeah, I looked it up. I didn't see anything like really clear on that. Actually, shout out to my boy. I think the one that originally brought this up was Fam. I think when we were talking about Fam, I think he was the first one to bring that up and said, yeah, they're going to have to move. Like, they can't be a AAA team. I think he said that, again, in his understanding of it is like they had to be lower than AAA. And so, like, why would that be? Why would they put that in place? The reason that they would put that in place is it's an advantage to have your AAA team and your pro team right down the street from each other. When you send guys up, like there's a lot of times too where they send guys up like too, the guys got to wait a day, there's travel, there's all these things, and also too it makes it easier to send guys up and down. It gives the GM an advantage to like get his players back and like not and them being more recovered, all that stuff, right? Like it's just an advantage, right? And also another thing, like you said, I think the other big part of that is like again minor league, like the setup between minor league teams and the agreement they have major league teams is like, yeah, like a lot of these minor league clubs, like people don't understand that too with like minor league pay. It's like, oh, why do they pay them so cheap? It's like, dude, a lot of these minor league stadiums are like they're not a minor league stadium. Again, what are your tickets? Again, $10 to $40
I was gonna
bucks
say,
maybe.
when I looked it
right?
up to get a relatively decent ticket up
Yeah.
there, it was like 2 weekends ago. They were playing the Dodgers, and it was like $8 a ticket.
Yeah,
Unless
Yeah.
you're getting into a suite.
yeah.
but
Where
it's like,
where you're going, like, like for example, the other thing is like I know like when I go to like a Yankees game or like when I went to every time I've been to a Yankees game and got decent seats, like not like again sitting right behind the dugout or something like that, like decent seats. Any Yankee game has been over $100 a ticket.
Oh,
Like,
really?
easy. Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, in Kansas City, because I was back there when they won the World Series,
Yeah.
15, 16-ish.
I watched them when they played the
or 14,
Royals, and it was
15.
over $100 a ticket.
Yeah, no, and it was like, I mean, you could go, which Royal Stadium's pretty big. They had the All-Star game there when I lived there too, and it was like packed, and it was like, you didn't realize how big it was until they filled it. But
Yeah.
I mean, you could go there and get $10 tickets pretty easily in Kansas. I mean,
it's
I
not-
don't know
it's not that those
anymore.
don't
but
like, for example, what I mean by like, okay, so my $100
it'd be
ticket
down
was
by
like
the
3 or 4 rows back from like the foul pole. Right?
yeah.
And it's like, and I mean not on the line, not like home run side on the in foul
side.
territory.
Yeah,
In foul territory, like I was like
closer to the dugout than outfield.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, but not. I mean, I was right next to the pole, but I was in foul territory, like 4 or 5 rows back, and that ticket, each ticket was like 120 each,
Yeah,
right? And it was like, again, the Royals at the time were like, okay,
they're all
right?
right. Yeah,
And
They haven't
again,
been- it was like 2 years they were
yeah,
real good.
and the Yankees were okay that year too. They weren't
Mhm.
like unbelievable. It's just like anytime the Yankees are in town, the tickets are usually more.
Yeah, just a
expensive,
big
but-
brand.
Yeah, it's just a big brand. So I think that's, again, along with that. So that I think will be interesting. I definitely think with everybody, with the location and all that stuff, though, too, they're going to get a lot of people that are just in town
just
that are
want to
gonna
go.
Yeah, no, so I think that will be pretty big there, just about, the game and what's going to happen here locally. And like for us, it's going to be huge too as well. Like players and stuff we train, they can be hidden with us before they go over to the game. We do that now with the AAA team. So that's pretty, that's going to be big. Just now we can do it at the MLB level. And also too, like who knows, like consulting wise and some of the things that might come in that direction. And especially if the organization's trying to spend some money and
Yeah.
do some things that could be some big things with us personally. So yeah, I think that would be big. But I think those are a lot of things happen around the game. We're gonna actually start doing more podcasts like this too, about like current things that are happening in the game, and we'll do some of that. Also, too, me and Code been playing some MLB The Show. So look out for some of those posts. Those are pretty hilarious.
Batting practice.
He finally, again,
Batting
my boy finally got a dub on me yesterday. You know what I'm saying? He's feeling froggy. So
All I know is I don't see
you know
a
what I'm saying?
recorded
I
session
might-
of the
I might-
losses.
I might have to play him today just because I can't have him go through the whole weekend thinking
BP
that
again.
he's beat me on the show. Okay, so
Mhm.
that's another thing. But let me pray us out real quick, and then we'll see you guys here. So let's pray through it. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you so much for giving us this opportunity. One, just to speak about all the ways that you're moving and the things that you're changing inside of our lives, and how you're working with all that. Just the different ways that you're reaching us. Let us not forget the bigger picture. Let us not forget what truly matters with all of these things throughout life that are pulling our attention and demanding us to take our eyes off of you. So help us keep our eyes on you, God, because we know that is life, that is hope, that gives us energy, and it gives us purpose, God. And we just ask that all of these things happen in Jesus' name. Amen. All right.
Nombre of Jesus.
Well, guys, until next time, Farm System out.
Peace.